The good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a title, it's a presentation I had some time ago, a number of years ago, but now with these new changes, it kind of had a new life to it because we have a real new ugly part to it. So, what is in the context of Medicaid, is there any good? And the answer is 100% yes. The good part about Medicaid is that your care will be paid for. You have to follow the Medicaid rules. You got to follow the eligibility process and all of their laws. But the good news is that the Medicaid program will pay for the care. Okay. Now, the bad. What actually is going to be the bad part of Medicaid? Well, it's the application process. And within that, it's all of the eligibility rules as far as assets and income and care needs. Okay. So that's the bad part of Medicaid. Now, the ugly part. The ugly part that caught most of us, some of us off guard back in April, are the changes that are coming down the road. It appears that Albany was maybe bored with the pandemic. And they wanted to, and they try to change Medicaid each and every year, but we weren't expecting it this year with everything else going on, to be very honest with you. But as of April 3rd, there are new laws coming down the pike that impact community-based Medicaid. So the real ugly part, and this is statewide, and people are starting to panic. We're starting to get nervous because there's so many clients that are looking for the applications to get filed before these changes are implemented. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts. The ugly part of Medicaid are these changes that are coming down the road. So let's get into this. But before I get into the details, I want to give a little background. Okay. How does this all fit in? And as we get older, and I share this with really most of my clients in our consultations, as we get older, we can have medical needs or we can have what's called chronic needs or long-term care needs. Okay. And the reality is that medical needs are those, just like the picture, are those that are going to be where you're seeing your doctor or a hospital or surgery issues, rehabilitation centers for physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. That's all medical. Okay. And because it's medical in nature, it's prescribed by your doctor, and Medicare or your health insurance if you're younger, or your Advantage plan if you have that, are going to be paying for those medical needs. On the other side of the coin here, or the slide, is you have long term care needs. Okay. And long term care needs, by definition, are not medical, they are chronic or custodial in nature. Okay. And when you have chronic or custodial needs, they are going to be based on what we are able to functionally perform. It's the activities of daily living. Okay. So if you need assistance with walking, bathing, toileting, dressing, all those activities of daily living, that is long term care, and Medicare is not paying for it. Okay. Again, if it's not medical, then Medicare is not paying for it. So since there's no Medicare to pay for it, it's up to us to pay for it. And why is paying for long term care such a big issue? Well, one issue, it's because it's so very expensive. So let me cover those background costs just a little bit to kind of put this in perspective again. On the home care side, and again, big picture, there are three general places where we can receive long term care: in the home, or a child's home, or another loved one's home, in an assisted living facility, or in what's called a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility. Okay, so home care, you'd think that it would be more affordable, and it is, relatively speaking. However, hourly home care can be anywhere from $22 to $30 an hour, which adds up to nearly $400 a day for some people. And monthly, you could be looking at about $11,000 a month for home care if it's 24/7. Okay. And you just times that by 12, and you're about $140,000 a year for 24/7 home care. Of course, you can have less care needs and pay less. And that is for most people where they, or for some people where they stay. But for most people, there's a progression, and there's typically a decline and a more need for care. So that's where you get hit with greater hours and, of course, greater expense. The other place to receive long term care is what's called assisted living. Now, assisted living is not for everybody, but it is the perfect scenario for those folks that have those needs that fit into that category of a certain level of function and a socialization need. But it's not inexpensive, okay? The monthly costs for an assisted living can be anywhere from $5,000 to $9,000 a month. That's just room and board. Okay. Um, Again, do it annually. You're over $100,000 for room and board within an assisted living. And on top of this is the care needs, or are the care needs. So if you have any care needs on top of room and board, you're adding $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a month. And this is all private pay out of pocket. Okay. So assisted living is an option for some families, but it's going to be pretty darn expensive. Now, finally, the third place to receive long-term care is going to be in the skilled nursing facility or the nursing home, and this is a whole nother ballpark when it comes to costs. You're looking at a daily rate for a nursing home, not rehab, not operating room, not hospital. This is a nursing facility of about $475 all the way up to $650 a day, and then some are even more expensive than that. Okay, so monthly, a nursing home is $14,000 to $20,000 a month. Annually, you're looking at $170,000 to almost $250,000 a year to privately pay for a nursing home. Can't be done. It will bankrupt a family. Okay, so now let's get into the reality that because those expenses exist and because it can bankrupt a family, what is so good about Medicaid? And as I said in the beginning, the good part is Medicaid will pay for that care. All right. So, what do they pay for? Well, we have a community Medicaid program, which is home care, and we have a chronic care Medicaid program. That's the nursing home. Okay. In the community Medicaid side, they're paying for home health care. All right. They'll be paying for a personal care aide to come in to assist with the activities of daily living, walking, bathing, toileting, dressing, um, light housekeeping, food preparation, and so forth. So that is a very valuable service. It's typically what our clientele are after, so they can keep their loved one within the home. The Community Medicaid program will also pay for the Assisted Living Program, ALPs. There are a handful, and I mean literally a handful, of assisted living facilities that can get paid for by Medicaid. All right. Maybe there's about 6 or 7 of them on Long Island. We need more of these. But Medicaid will pay the room and board, and there'll be a certain level of congregate care within that facility. Okay. Most of them have wait lists, as you could imagine. Now, community Medicaid also pays for adult daycare. Obviously, we've had some problems with the pandemic and they've been shut down, but it's out there. Okay. And Lord willing, all this will be opening up at some point in the near future. Community Medicaid is a part of a managed long-term care system. So there were a whole host of other benefits that are tied to joining the managed long-term care program through community Medicaid. Now, on the nursing home or chronic care side, it's a much shorter list. And the bottom line is that the nursing home will get paid for based or through this chronic care Medicaid program. 100% good, 100% necessary, but like everything that is good out there, that can be a bad side or a dark side to it. Okay. So the bad. What we're talking about when it comes to the bad is going to be the application process. Now, to me, that also includes eligibility. I'll be getting into eligibility a little bit in the ugly part, but the bottom line is all Medicaid applications are going to be based on your assets, your income, and your care needs. Your assets have to be below a certain threshold, your income has to be below a certain threshold, and your care level has to be at a certain threshold. Okay. Um, Asset wise, $15,750. That is what an applicant for Medicaid is allowed to have, in addition to any retirement accounts, in addition to their home. Now, both of those have tricky rules about them. The 15,750 is a firm number, so you always want to be below that amount, way below that amount, when applying for community or nursing facility Medicaid. But again, there's eligibility rules. The IRAs have special rules for them to be exempt from the asset calculations. All right. Again, we covered a lot of this in other webinars, so you can certainly go to the website and take a look at that. The house, what we just covered last week. Medicaid rules say you can have your home in your name, but you don't want your home in your name when you're applying for Medicaid. Because if you vacate that home and go to an assisted living or a nursing home and that home is empty, Medicaid will put a lien on the property. All right. So you can have the house, you just don't want it. The other case is if you keep the house and receive community Medicaid for your remaining years and then pass away, and that house goes through your estate and your spouse isn't living there or some other exempt people, then Medicaid is going to pursue that house for recovery. So protecting the house in the eligibility world, again, covered last week. You can see all about that and how to do it in last week's webinar on our website. Okay. So what's the bad about the application process? Well, the application process has its own built-in difficulties. All right. Medicaid is going to be about a lot of documentation. All right. So this can literally have families pulling their hair out and being stressed. So we've put together a 5-page checklist of all the documents that we're going to need and audit and review before Medicaid ever sees the application. Okay. Of our 5-page checklist, it's for everybody, so it has some items that may not apply to your specific situation. So of the 5 pages, perhaps 3 of it is the real meaty documents that we need. Okay. Primarily, it's going to be financial documentation covering a look back period, which I'll talk about in a little bit. It's also going to be personal information, biographical information, birth certificate, picture ID, marriage certificate, divorce decree, death certificates, health insurance cards. So the checklist is all the documentation that's required, and that's going to be on the family. That's their homework to get it to us. Okay. We can assist and guide and help with letters and phone calls, but ultimately that's up to the family to provide that documentation. Okay. That can be difficult, but it has to get done. And the longer it takes for a family to get us the documentation, the longer that Medicaid application can't be filed. Okay. Another part of the bad part of the application process is the back and forth and what I call the pens. Okay. So back and forth means you have your checklist, you drop off a email or you upload to our secure site documents. So let's say you give us A, B, C, and D. We'll start to review them. We'll say thank you for A, B, C, and D, but we still need E, F, and G. And while we're reviewing A, B, C, and D, we just came up with new information. So now we're going to need X, Y, and Z as well. So there's always a back and forth with the documentation. Can't do anything about it. We need to have as much information and as much paper and data analyzed and audited so we can create the best application and hopefully get it approved with the minimal amount of pens, PENDS. It's just short for pending. All right. Once Medicaid gets an application, they'll review it and basically do the same thing we just did with the clients. They'll say, thank you for all this, but now we need A, B, and C. Our goal is to keep that penned request as short as possible so that the time is not wasted, so that we can get our approval even sooner. But again, usually it happens. Okay. We do all we can to make sure it doesn't, but there can be penned requests. So this back and forth takes time, and yes, it can be stressful. My attorneys know exactly what they're doing. Our paralegals know exactly what they're doing. We have the right people and the contacts at the Medicaid agencies, but paperwork is paperwork, and if they need it, they're going to need it. So we try to be as prepared as possible. It can seem annoying at times, but it's look at it this way. Medicaid isn't going to just come along and pay $8,000 a month for home care or $18,000 a month that pay the $18,000 a month bill for the nursing home. They need to make sure you're eligible. Okay. So this is the cost of getting Medicaid to pay. All right. If you can look at it that way, it's a little easier to understand. The other bad aspect of Medicaid is going to be the timeline. Working with a great client right now. Spoke to him a month ago, 4 weeks ago. He hired us 3 weeks ago. But during our initial consultation, it was, okay, we need Medicaid. I'm like, great, we can help with this. And we focus on this, and this is how we do it. and he wanted an aide in there next week. It unfortunately does not work that way. Medicaid takes time. There is a timeline that I share with people. In a home care scenario, for example, it's about 3 different segments. There's all that document gathering I just shared, okay, in that last bullet point. Then there's the application process, the back and forth with them. And then there's going to be the care assessment portion. The timeline can be anywhere from 5 to 6 months before Medicaid actually comes in to pay for an aide or approves and pays for a nursing home. Okay. Now, the good news is that the faster or more organized you can get us the documentation, the faster we can file and hopefully not have a lot of pens and move on down that timeline. The timeline has been extended. Okay. We just finished, or we've been dealing with the pandemic and the shutdown. There's a backlog of files. There's a backlog of applications sitting there from when Medicaid wasn't working. They're now opening up. There's some people working, not everybody. There's more of a backlog. There's all these applications that are getting put together. Now you look at the ugly part of our webinar today, and there's changes coming. So before those changes, more people are trying to file. So that is in fact extending the timeline. All right. Bottom line is, throughout everything I'm saying today, the sooner you act, the better. Okay. Next point, interim care costs. Now, because of that timeline, the family is going to have to pay for care while that application is processed. Okay. There was a time where they would reimburse for that time frame. It's not practical at this point. So that's not even something that can be pursued successfully. So in essence, if we're hired in January and we don't get Medicaid aid into that home until May, that's 4 or 5 months where the family has to pay for the care. All right. But at least you know there's light at the end of the tunnel. You know it's going to be ending. Okay. In a nursing home, assuming everything is done properly and the business office of the nursing home knows the law firm and trusts the law firm, there should be no issue with what we call Medicaid pending. So typically what happens in a nursing home setting, once somebody is admitted to the long-term care side of a nursing facility, that facility will sit and wait for Medicaid to be approved. So the interim costs in a nursing facility are going to be much less and in fact shouldn't be existent at all. There can be a month or two that has to get paid. There can be partial months that have to get paid, but it's not going to be 5-6 months worth of paying. Okay. The final point I want to talk about on the bad side is the reality that there can be a denial. Gratefully, our attorneys, Liz and Amy, and our paralegals, we have solid staff and solid help and professionals that are getting a lot of approvals. We're getting a tremendous amount of approvals. If there is a denial because a document was missing or something wasn't done, then there is an appeal process, which just extends things. Okay. So again, eligibility and application, that can be complicated. It is the bad part of Medicaid. All right. But again, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now, the ugly. What is that? What is this all about? Well, the ugly part of Medicaid is going to be the coming changes. It's what I've been alluding to for the last 20, 25 minutes. As I said, primarily, home care has been a very accessible community-based program throughout New York. I have a lot of colleagues in other elder law attorneys in other states. We have been the envy of other attorneys in other states because of our eligibility requirements, our simplified low threshold eligibility requirements for community-based Medicaid. That's all coming to an end. Nursing facility Medicaid is not changing. Okay, so I'm not going to be spending a lot of time talking about that, but I will in a moment explain the difference. Okay, so what exactly is being impacted by these drastic, draconian, ugly changes that are coming? Well, it's all about, like I said, community-based long-term care services. So home health care eligibility is going to be impacted. The private duty nursing program, that's going to be impacted. Personal care services, the assisted living program, and consumer directed. That's what falls under community-based. Okay, so all of these have the potential to be impacted. Now, with that said, all we have for this law that's rolling out in a couple of months is the text of the law itself. We don't have any implementation. We don't have any guidelines. We don't have any regulations to follow. So there are certain highlighted parts that I'm going to get into that we know about for sure, but there's going to be a lot of this new law that we're going to have to learn on the go because it hasn't been implemented yet. All right. So everything I say today in regard to the new law should be good, but it's subject to change. All right. Now, um, now, in addition to this, I mentioned this earlier, managed long-term care, those agencies, MLTCs, they are the ones that deliver all these services. So yes, they can be impacted as well. So let's get into the changes in a moment. Before I get into the big ugly changes, let me share a little bit of background here. Um, I've been practicing elder law for almost 23 years. I was sworn in as an attorney and have done nothing but estate planning and elder law. Yes, of course, we've done some real estate here and there, but it's my heart has always been elder law, elder care. Let's help the families with their aging loved ones. And I can say, thank God, it's been almost 23 years that we've been doing this. But what I discovered about halfway through, in about 2008, 2009, is that when families were coming, all right, and actually it was years before that I felt it, but I didn't do anything about it until about 2008, 2009, is that families were coming because of the elder care help that was required. All right. It wasn't always about just the documentation or the Medicaid work or protecting the house. It was about the care for their loved one. So, what we've done is over the years is I've broken down our services when it comes to Medicaid and care into three parts. All right, it's what we call the domains. Okay, you have the legal domain, you have the financial domain, and you have the personal care domain. Okay, now we believe that these using these different perspectives and domains, it's the best way and most comprehensive approach that clients need as they're dealing with these elder care issues. Now, I do what I do because I lived it for a number of years as I was growing up. Back in the 80s and 90s, I saw my mom and dad deal with, my dad had 10 siblings, there was 11 of them. And I saw those that were involved struggling, working with grandma and grandpa. My mom was two kids. And my aunt is down in Florida, so there was a lot right on my mom for those years. And my Tina and Papa, my mom's parents, were right next door to us in Malvern, where I grew up. So I was deeply interwoven and deeply involved with all of the emotional aspects of doctor appointments, dealing with the home in the house, care in the house, hospice issues. I wasn't old enough to help, but I was the 10 and 13, 14-year-old getting driven around dealing with these issues. So it's this legal, financial, and care approach that I so wish that my own parents had as they dealt with my four grandparents. So I truly believe, and I know that this is the way, and clients have shared over the last 11 years, this is the right way to help families. Now, do you want to know why these three reasons, these three domains work so well in dealing with these elder care issues? Because it's the same three areas that Medicaid focuses on as they're reviewing and putting together the application. All right, so let me show you. On the legal side, all right, Medicaid will focus on what actions have been taken by the applicant to protect their assets, to become eligible. What have they done for asset protection purposes to get down below that $15,000 that I was speaking about? Now, I'm not talking today about in depth about the legal aspect of asset protection because I've covered that in my prior webinars. All right. So again, you can check that on the website. But we are going to be talking about the financial side. All right. Now, Medicaid is going to want to ensure that the applicant meets the financial eligibility requirements at the time of application. All right. Meaning, when did the applicant become financially eligible? And then in the big picture, once the legal aspects of eligibility and becoming financially eligible are addressed, then the care side comes into play. And Medicaid will ensure, we have to do it first, but then Medicaid will ensure that the applicant meets a certain threshold, that certain care needs apply, okay, before they'll actually approve the services, okay? So legal, financial, and care. Today, I'm going to be talking about the financial and the care a bit, all right? um, the ugly financial and care changes that are coming. So let's get into the ugly a little bit. What are the legal, the financial ugly changes that are coming? Well, first, we have a 30-month look back starting for community Medicaid. All right, so let me give you the background and the big picture. Um, as I said before, community Medicaid has always been more simplified and the eligibility requirements have been very low threshold. In fact, community Medicaid has never had a look back period at all. Contrast that with nursing home Medicaid. Okay. So when somebody is applying for Medicaid to pay for a nursing home, there is a 60-month, a 5-year look back, a 5-year review of all of the applicants and spouses' financial records. All right. They literally, and we have to do it first, audit and review every side of every page of every financial statement for every month during the look back period. They're looking to see what the applicant or the spouse has done with the financial assets to become eligible. All right. To me, the 30-month look back that's coming for home care, just like the 60-month look back for nursing home care, is all about one thing. All right. A look back period is all about penalties. So that's the next step that's happening on the ugly changes that are occurring. So community Medicaid, as of October 1st of this year, a mere 2.5 months away, is going to be implementing a 30-month look back as well as implementing penalties. Now, where do the penalties come into play? Well, during the look back, they're looking for asset protection steps. And if they see any financial accounts or real estate being transferred to children's names or being put into what's called the best tool we have, what's called an irrevocable asset protection trust, then they will be penalized. Now, the penalty is not specifically dollars, but it's time. Okay. So, what Medicaid says is if they see a gift or a transfer during a look back period that is not exempt from penalties, for every $13,407 worth of value, meaning, and I like round numbers, for every 13 grand that is given away or protected, Medicaid will not pay for the care for 1 month. Okay? It's always been that way for nursing home care. This is brand new for home care. All right? So I'll give you an example. If mom gives daughter Susan $130,000 and then applies for Medicaid within the look back period, Medicaid will see that $130,000 gift. They will divide it by that 13,407 number, and they will arrive at 10. That is 10 months in which Medicaid will not pay for the care. Again, something we've always had for nursing home and never had for home care. Even today, we don't have it for home care. July applications, no look back, no penalty for home care. August applications for Medicaid, no look back period, no penalties. September applications for community Medicaid, no look back period, no penalties. Come October, you're getting nailed. All right. There's going to be a 30-month look back period for any application for community services after October 1st, which will also mean these penalties. This is where it's going to get ugly. Okay. This is resolved by taking action now. All right. We are running out of time. No ifs, ands, or buts. Clients that are hiring us today, I'm telling them we've only got 2.5 months to get all that documentation I was telling you about in the bad part. Okay. So I'm going to move on just for time's sake. If you have questions about this, we provide free consultations, Zoom these days. They've actually been working out pretty good. If you have an issue, we can help with that. All right. Now, let's get into the care side of the big ugly. So the 30-month look back and the financial is the 30-month look back, and the penalties are the financial side of the ugly. Now, this is the care side of the ugly changes. Okay. There are a total of 6 ugly changes that we're going to see on the care front. The first is the activities of daily living. Okay. This will require the most explanation. So let me take a minute or two to do that. Activities of daily living. There is typically 6 of them. Okay. Ambulating, walking, feeding, being able to eat, dressing yourself, personal hygiene, bathing, continence, being able to use the toilet when appropriate, and toileting itself, all right, actually physically using the toilet. Now, these have always been used in Medicaid eligibility determinations, okay? The current system requires that you show a need during assessments. There are assessments where a nurse comes to the house in two different circumstances, to determine whether or not the care is needed, and then to determine how many hours of care are going to be paid for. The amount of care provided is based on these activities of daily living. Currently, you'd have to show need with two of those six activities of daily living. That is typically doable. However, there's changes coming, okay? The new care requirement as of October, all right? So I can't even say it's all new applications. I and we here at Tully Law personally believe this new care requirement is going to apply to all assessments after October. All right. So this is going to be interesting to see how it rolls out. But what's coming is we're going from a requirement of any assistance with the activities of daily living to a requirement of limited assistance with, quote, physical maneuvering with more than two activities of daily living, more than two ADLs. That means three or more, right? So this is a higher threshold, and we don't necessarily legally, technically know what physical maneuvering means. Does it mean just guiding? Does it mean more physical assistance? So that is going to have to be defined as this new rule is implemented, okay? But again, a greater amount of ADLs is going to be required under the new law. However, there is some good news in the new law. The state has finally recognized the need for supervision of those with Alzheimer's or dementia. Okay. So for those with Alzheimer's or dementia, they will need an actual diagnosis. All right. And then they have to show at least supervision with more than one ADL, which means two ADLs. Okay. So we have to have a diagnosis, and then we have to have at least supervision with at least two ADLs. Okay. Again, this is a step in the right direction. And it's good they included Alzheimer's and dementia, but we're going to need to know and need some guidance as to what supervision means. And we'll see that once the new law rolls out and we start seeing it implemented. One of the questions, does supervision mean prompting? Prompting is required for a lot of folks with this type of a diagnosis or this type of a concern. So we have to see if that fits within the definition of supervision. All right. More good news in regard to these types of issues is that we do believe that home health care assistance, including the consumer directed program, as far as the level of care needed, should be grandfathered in to the new law. Okay. So we don't see, if you're currently on Medicaid now, them all of a sudden saying, oh, now you have to prove three. Okay. Or now you have to show supervision. We're not expecting that to happen for current cases. Okay. Now, after the new requirement on the activities of daily living, there is going to be a requirement that the services must be prescribed by a qualified independent physician selected or approved by the Department of Health. This will certainly present more issues because a contract physician from New York State, first of all, I don't see them going to the house, all right, which means you're going to have to bring your loved one. Again, can be a problem, but they're not going to know the needs. The family physician, the physician for that loved one, that applicant for Medicaid, is the best one to decide, but they're not going to be a part of this. Next, New York State will be introducing a new standardized task-based assessment tool as of next April. All right, it's going to help determine how many hours of care. Possibly some silver lining is we'd see some consistency as far as hours awarded and level of care being awarded. So this could be a good thing. Then there's going to be what's called an independent assessor appointed by the state, supposed to be by October, to replace what's called the MLTC assessment. Okay. That is going to be, where they determine how many hours of care are going to be approved. Perhaps that independent assessor will be using that assessment tool. Um, as I said before, there are assessments right now where nurses come into the house. There's two separate occasions under the current law where two different nurses are coming. That first nurse is determining whether long-term care is needed. That second nurse is with this MLTC to determine the hours. That looks like it's going to be changing after October. Okay. Now, the next two changes are related. They're going to be equally as important, but I believe harder, much harder to implement, because this next one is safety in the community. All right. The new law is going to allow the state to consider whether the Medicaid recipient is capable of, quote, safely remaining in the community. Safety is a good thing. It's noble. We need our families to be safe. But the reality is, if somebody's facing safety issues in their home, it's probably because Medicaid hasn't approved enough hours. All right. That's the reality. It's certainly an area where advocacy and coordination is going to be needed throughout the year. And that's where we come into play. We're very different than other elder law firms out there. What we do is what's called elder care law. I have my experienced elder law attorneys and I have my advocates on staff. We come on all hands on deck as a team to address the legal and the financial and the care needs so that we can help alleviate the concerns and the stresses mostly of this whole Medicaid process. All right. Now, the next issue is that's going to be implemented with these ugly changes is an extra review of high hour consumers. Again, there's a focus on safety. High hour perhaps means 12 or more hours. If you have more than 12 hours of care per day, 24/7, or what's called split shift, they're going to be reviewing to determine whether or not the state believes a person can safely remain in their home. That raises a whole host of issues. Who's to determine safety? Who's to determine what risks I'm willing to take? The state is going to come in and determine my autonomous decision to stay within my own home. I see a whole host of problems with these last two. Okay. But again, it's going to require advocacy and it's going to require intervention and it's going to require coordination. And that's the kind of services that we provide. Okay. Um, so when does all this take effect? As I was sharing, October 1st. That's scary. It's 2.5 months away. Okay. Again, as I'm telling people, clients hiring us this week, things are going to be tight time wise. We're going to need real diligent and disciplined action on the family's part to get us all of that application material as soon as possible so we can make our analysis and perform our strategies, protect assets if necessary, and get that application filed in September. No attorney should be guaranteeing that they can do that. Okay. We will take every single effort. And if you do your part, we'll do our part. Okay. But it's going to be tight from this point forward. All right. October 1st. So, what does this all mean? Okay. Well, when do we take action? What do we do? You do it now. All right. If you're looking at protecting your assets, if you're younger and perhaps healthier, protect your assets sooner. We like to think about late 60s. Get the asset protection in place so that you can start the look back periods, end the look back periods, and then if you need care, all that is off the table. Okay. So, timing, protecting your assets even earlier now because of this new ugly law is crucial. If you actually have a care need, as I was saying, contact us. All right. Medicaid can help. If we can get an application in before October 1st, you won't have the look back period and you won't have the penalties. Okay. So, as I was sharing in the beginning, the way we do this, the way it helps clients the best is addressing the legal needs, the financial needs, the care needs. We come at it. The legal goal for my firm is to protect as much of the assets and as much of the income as possible. The financial goal for us, make that client eligible for Medicaid as soon as possible and getting them paid, getting that care paid for as soon as possible. On the care side, my advocates are here to make sure and do all they can to make sure that your loved one is getting the best care possible, whether at home or in assisted living or a nursing home. The name of this service is what we call life care planning. Our website talks about it, tullyelderlaw.com. Or if you consult with me about your care needs, we'll be talking about this model. Okay. It truly is a very comprehensive and, in my opinion, the best way to address these elder care needs. So thank you. I have, it's 1:46. I think we did all right time-wise. If you have any questions or you want to request the topic, shoot me an email, brian@tullyelderlaw.com. For those on the phone, it's BRIAN at Tully, TULLY, elderlaw.com, or the phone number 631-424-2800. Facebook, Instagram, all of that stuff out there. That's where we do our updates. That's where we share information. So follow us on those platforms. Now, let me see if we have any questions that I can answer that perhaps have arisen throughout. Now, any questions, folks? Let me know. Let me go through here. All right. Now, what about spousal? Okay, great point. The question is, what's happening with spousal refusal? So there are a couple things that are not being impacted by this new law. Thank God. Spousal refusal will still be available in nursing facility cases and home care cases. Every single year, there is a challenge by the state budget to remove spousal refusal for home care. But gratefully, that hasn't happened, and it hasn't happened this year either. Okay, so that will be available. Now, there said another question popped up. So here we go. Is it true that a patient leaves the nursing home before he dies, Medicaid does not pursue recovery? So the question is it true that if a patient leaves the nursing home before he passes away, Medicaid does not pursue recovery? You have to be a medic. If you leave the facility and end Medicaid altogether, then yes, there's a good chance that's not going to happen. That recovery won't be pursued. But if a person passes away while on Medicaid, there will be recovery. Is money in a joint account protected for Medicaid eligibility purposes? Great question, Sandy, and the answer is no, unfortunately. When Medicaid is looking at the assets to determine whether or not the person is eligible under that 15 grand, they're looking at checking accounts, savings, CDs, non-qualified annuities, life insurance cash value, investments, stocks, bonds, excess vacation homes. And anything that's joint that has the applicant's name on it is going to be counted as if it was entirely the applicant's. So a $30,000 bank account between mom, who needs Medicaid, and a daughter will be deemed to be mom's. So mom will have too much money and she's not yet eligible for Medicaid. We can fix it, but that's what you're looking at, okay? Now, if that child can prove that they put the money in the account, then we have an argument to say it's not mom's money and it's not the applicant's money, okay? So it's fact sensitive. If a patient has about, if a Medicaid applicant has about 100 grand and nursing home costs how much, how soon should we apply? The bottom line is that if somebody is in a nursing home, you do not have to spend down your money, okay? If you have $100,000 and you're in a nursing home paying for it privately, talk to me, talk to somebody like me, because we can shelter, not all of it, we can protect probably about 50% of that money. So if you're paying, all right, again, stop paying. Talk to a certified elder law attorney. Talk to us, somebody that knows what they're doing in this field, and we'll be able to protect a portion of that, okay? So the answer is to the question, how soon should we apply? The answer is as soon as possible, all right? Is a senior safe if they put their property in an LLC? Well, it all depends. If it's an individually owned LLC without a business purpose, I think it's going to be susceptible to a challenge. Okay. If it's a legitimate business and there's other members and there's ongoing business activities, I think you have a better chance of sheltering it. The best tool out there, and this goes under that KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. All right. An irrevocable trust will have the most flexibility, the most contingencies, the most tax benefits than any other asset protection tool out there. All right. So utilize the irrevocable trust, have an attorney that knows what they're doing, talk to us about it, because that's going to be a better tool to protect assets. Okay. That's all I see on the questions. Again, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope to see you next week. All right. So, again, emails and requests for registration, they'll start getting pumped out, and we'll see you then. Thank you. Bye bye.